Oh, so now, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and welcome to a conversation with. I am your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr. And today we are joined by
Hi.
veteran line producer. She's been
God,
in
that
this
makes me sound
game.
old.
You're seasoned. We don't say
I'm
old around here.
seasoned.
You're seasoned. We are joined by seasoned line producer Nicci Freeman. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to sit down today and talk with this young lady because when we're talking about how to be a line producer in Hollywood, she is very knowledgeable because again, she has over 20 years of experience in the game. And we're just going to give you a little background on my phenomenal guest. Nicci Freeman has been working in some form of the entertainment industry her entire life, from working with her parents. Her mom was a costume designer, and her dad was a female impersonator, both on and off stage, and then transitioning to film, television, video, commercial, and print in her 25-year career. She has worked as a producer, line producer, unit production manager, production coordinator, costume designer, and a PA. Her
Yeah.
career spans features, television series, music videos, and we got to talk about that music video thing, and
Okay.
commercials, working for such names as Spike Lee, Lady Gaga, Will Smith, and Mariah Carey. And I'm sure you guys have heard those names a few times.
Yeah.
She is also a member of the Directors Guild of America as a unit production manager, and she spent 2 years as head of production for an independent film company, producing 1.5 to $35 million pictures. And additionally, she has recently worked on a number of projects while dealing with the challenges of filming in the time of COVID. Now, some
Yes.
of her feature projects include Gemini Lounge, a Cowgirl Song, Snapshot of Love, The Message, and Hardcore Henry. Television products include Your Attention Please, Rhett and Linky's
Mhm.
Buddy System, Comic Relief, and the Casino. And among the music videos she has worked on are those by the artist Dwight Yoakam. I
Yoakum.
said Yoakam. I see
Dwight Yoakam. Yeah.
Dwight Yoakam. Uh, Lincoln Park, Nicki Minaj, Ariana Grande, Tigger, Aloe Black, Will Smith, P. Diddy, and Godsmack. The list goes on and on and
Yeah.
on. And on top of all of that, she is an accomplished photographer.
Yeah. That's
Ladies
my
and
hobby.
gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Miss Nicci Been There, Done That Freeman to the to the show. Nicci, how you doing,
Yeah.
girl?
I'm good. I'm good. Been there, done that, seen it, seen a lot of it.
Well, you know what? That's a good thing. So, with
Mhm.
that, how did you get started in this business?
Ooh, um, informally, my father had a show, and he was a drag queen. He was a female impersonator, and um, I was not allowed to not work as a child. So, I would do lighting for him. I would stand outside and like wave at people and get them to come into the show. They always had me doing something. My mom's a costume designer. So, there's me like doing little things as a kid because I wanted to hang out with them. And then I really wanted to be an actor. And I started, as background, and God, that was boring because you just sat around all day long waiting to do something. And then when you finally were going to do something, you were either hot or cold. Um, and one day, this location manager was looking for a PA and asked me if I would be interested. And I, worked with them in some form in Vegas for doing stuff. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to come and PA this? We need an additional PA." And I was like, "Sure." And it was uh, Puffy and Mace's Bad Boys video.
Mm.
And wow, that was like, I mean, yes, it was Hype Williams, so it was a 23-hour day, and I thought I was gonna die. And but I kind of got behind the camera and was like, oh, this is not boring. Um, and that's kind of where I started. And I started off as a PA and did music videos for a while. And so there was like getting jiggy with it. I did some
Mm.
Godsmack. I did some Ice Cube, like anything that filmed in Vegas, I was a PA on. And then there was this lovely production manager who was shooting in Vegas, a commercial, and took a chance on me, bumped me up to a coordinator. And then I was like, oh, this is good too. And I just worked my way through the office.
Okay. So you start out as a PA, but from my
Mhm.
understanding, you wanted to act first?
I did. I did. But I mean, we're looking at uh, late 80s, early 90s. There were very few roles for people like me. Um, the ones that were there were going to the same people over and over.
Mhm.
It was kind of difficult. And then um, I'm just going to be honest. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Now we talked
Um,
about that in our
yeah, we
phone
talked
call.
about
This is
it.
that type of
Um,
podcast. You can
back in the 80s and 90s, most of the roles for Black women really were hood rat, hooker, crackhead, and not that like you couldn't act that, but I wasn't feeling it. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't something that I wanted to continuously put out there as this person. I did a bunch of acting jobs, like background or featured, or a featured character or day player, whatever, in movies like Fools Rush In. I was a cousin of Selma Hayek's character in Mars Attacks. I was a cocktail waitress. I was, uh, Casino. I was a cocktail waitress. I was a nurse. Just stuff like that. But the roles that I would have been going for, or the movies that I was watching, like I loved, The Breakfast Club and Star Wars, and those kinds of movies weren't casting people that looked like me,
Yes.
and it got discouraging. And then really, I was still trying to be an actor when I kind of got in behind the scenes, and so like obviously my first response is like a lot of people, oh, I'll be here and people will see me, and then I stopped auditioning
Mhm.
because I just kept getting job after job in the office. And then I realized that, hey, I can go this way and eventually become a producer and then make things for people like me.
Okay. S-
I'm still
s-
working on that.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, that's a journey that a
Yeah.
lot of us are still on. But did you
Yeah.
find that when you moved to the line producer side or the PA side or to the production side,
Hmm.
that that particular role fit you better than being in front of the camera?
Um, yes. And no.
Okay.
And yes. Um, I mean, when I was in front of the camera, people appreciated my sense of humor.
Mhm.
They do not appreciate it behind the camera.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Eh, yeah, here's the really weirdest thing about this. As a line producer, I'm in charge of money. I'm in charge of like accounting and stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not an accountant, but I'm kind of the head accountant.
Mhm.
And I I hated math. Like hated math. Did not want to do any form of math. I think I failed math twice, and had to go to summer school at one point for math. And now I'm in charge of numbers.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I was a model as a kid. I was a figure skater as a kid. Um, I was into all these sports, but for some, and honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor was because they would train you to do all kinds of cool things that I wanted to try. Like, hey, look, you're going to be in this movie and you have to ride a horse. So you get to spend like 6 weeks learning how to ride a horse.
Mm.
Or like, you need to do archery. You get to spend 6 weeks learning how to do archery. So I was like, this is fun. Like, I can pretend to be a spy. Yeah. So that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor. Like, I like the craft of it. I like the adventure of it. I wanted the travel. Never at any point really wanted to be famous because that just looked um, annoying.
Mhm.
Um, Somebody once asked me like what my goal would be if I was an actor, and I was like Robert Loggia because he's in everything. He's made a career and made his money and whatever, but he can walk down the street or go to a
Right.
restaurant and nobody bothers him. Like he gets invited to the parties, but he doesn't have to go.
Right.
So that was like my goal. Like, I didn't want to be bothered.
But you
And
know
being
what?
a producer means most of the time you get to
Okay.
do the fun things, travel, make the money, and you don't have to be bothered with the fame portion of it until you get to like become a Bruckheimer. But at that, or like, I mean, what Steven Spielberg looks like, what, Coppola looks like, but most of the other very famous directors or producers, you don't know them from walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
But they're making the cheddar.
And you know what? That's such a phenomenal point, because oftentimes people want to be in front, see me, see me, see me, not understanding that, like you just said, you could really make a phenomenal living in this business.
Oh yeah.
And just basically revel in obscurity. No one
Yes.
knows your name, but
Ooh. Sorry.
that's it's live, ladies and gentlemen. That's okay. Now, see, that's one of the things they used to teach you when you would go into the casting office. Turn off your phone.
Listen, I would have just gotten a fine on set for that, by the way.
Wow, but that's okay. But let's talk about your parents, because both of your parents were in the creation space. Your mom was a costume designer,
Yep.
and your dad was
a female
a
impersonator.
female impersonator.
Yeah.
So what was life like growing up having such creative parents?
Well, first of all, I think one of the funniest things is like I hear a lot like, oh, you don't want children to grow up XYZ, XYZ. I didn't know that my, growing up was any different than anybody else's until I got much, much older. Like I didn't realize that my dad dressing up as a woman was something that other people found odd. Like, and I mean, my dad had a show. He wasn't generally dressed as a woman walking down the street. Like he bartended during the day or whatever he was doing. And so it didn't seem that odd to me. There were moments like there was a moment when my mom was making my prom dress and she used my dad. She was like fixing it on my dad. And I walked in and he looked so much better in it than me. And I was devastated and just wanted to go and cry in the corner because I was not that thin, not that tall, and my boobs weren't that big. I mean, like he was stuffed, but so there were moments, but I didn't find it odd. I just, they were also both very open to anything you wanted to do. Like when I was ice skating and I really wanted to ice skate, like my mom was there or my dad was there to drive me back and forth to the rink. Sometimes they made me take the bus, but because when I was growing up, like your kid got kicked out of the house at 6 years old, you're kicked out of the house all day long. I feel for parents nowadays that you can't just shove them out the door. And
Right.
I grew up as a feral child, like, drank out of the hose when I was thirsty. Like sometimes somebody's parent would like feed you if they'd been shopping. It wasn't like making play dates. So they were, they would stick me on the bus to go to ice skating or to go to the rink, and I would take classes and compete. And then and luckily neither one of my parents were stage parents. So when I got sick of doing something, there was nobody there like forcing it on me. So when I was like, I don't want to skate anymore, I miss hanging out with my friends, my mom was like, so don't skate. Sometimes I look at them and I was like, you could have pushed a little bit harder.
Right.
But I appreciate them just kind of letting me do whatever it is, and just kind of letting me be. My mom would send me generally for the summers to my grandmother's house or my aunt's house in Austria. So I spent most of my summers in Europe, and we're not talking like, oh, I'm hanging out in Paris with my friends. I mean, very small village where I hung out at the pool with my friends or went skiing or whatever. Like it wasn't something glamorous that when you think, hey, I'm spending the summer in Europe. Like
Right.
it's not, it wasn't like that.
Right.
It was the same as sending me to Kansas.
Okay. So
Like,
that's interesting. So you were a feral child. So you kind of
yes.
described the childhood that we had, because I grew up in
Yes.
Philadelphia,
Uh-huh.
and when I was small,
Hmm.
at a certain time of the day, after you ate breakfast, you went outside and you better not come back in until it was time for dinner.
Right.
There was no running in and out. That's the way things work. So it was very funny just listening to you say that. And the water hose. These kids today are soft. Oh, they can't do this or they can't do that. Trust and believe. Eating food off the ground. Drinking water hoses. That stuff was normal for us. But with the way you grew up,
Yeah.
do you think that that really helped you become a good line producer? Because you were able to have so many different experiences, and your parents basically let you experience and learn things for yourself. So did that serve you when you
It
actually became a line producer?
it did, because I can think on my feet. Um, like I am really, like, I think one of my strengths is that I can problem solve on my feet, and I can problem solve in the strangest places. Like I've been, in Europe at a train station with my crew when the whole the whole Italian train network went on strike, and we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? And it helped that, first of all, traveling, I think, really broadens your horizons and makes you think on your feet as well, especially when I did it as a kid and in my teens and in my 20s, because a phone didn't exist. Like, I had a travel guide that I would rip the pages out of the places I was going to go, so I wasn't carrying too much weight in my backpack, and, a map. And like, I carried a stack of paper with me and tried to figure out like how to go places. I'd get lost and have to get back on another train and go the other way. So a lot of that, like just being feral, I can think on my feet, I can solve problems on my feet. Um, it,
You keep saying
um,
feral. That's hilarious.
I mean, uh, on the flip side of that, as a Gen Xer and kind of one of those, like, I can tell you, probably as a child, I probably avoided being kidnapped quite a few times that I don't
Mhm.
even think about, like, because we were taught to just fight back, say no. So I will sometimes tell folks about themselves, and people in this industry are kind of sensitive, and they don't want to hear about themselves.
So how do you navigate that? Because you're on set,
Mm.
and I'm sure
Mhm.
just reading your bio, you've been on set with some pretty major names.
Yes.
So that when you run into that situation, and I was listening to an interview earlier where you were talking about having to explain things to people when there's really no need for an explanation, but you have to basically
Oh
map it out.
well, I
So,
think that is a problem that women deal with. Period. Like, there is a whole thing about, if you ask me a question about something, or you ask a man a question about something, and the guy's like, no, everybody's like, okay, move on. If women say no, we have to have, like, this is why we're saying no, and here's our backup, and here's our source, and here's this, and you have to do your homework before you're able to say no.
hmm,
And that's not just in the film industry. It is still very, very much happening in the film industry, but I think that's in a lot of industries. Women cannot just say, like, hey, how about we, pan over here. A woman can't just say no. I don't think that'll work. They have to explain why, like, their thought process for everything.
mhm, mhm. So,
So, I mean, but that's growing up. That's like dealing with everything, and I believe that's why there's a lot of women in production. Like, there's a predominant in the production office. There's a predominant number of women, because we're very good at, like, navigating people's personalities. We're very good. We've been doing it, most of our lives. We're very good at being sensitive to personalities. Like, if you've ever been with a woman in a bar and she's got to say no to somebody, we're always very careful, because you never know if that dude's going to be outside ready to bash your head in. Um, and I mean, I don't mean to make it so dramatic, but let's face it, that has happened where somebody's feelings got hurt. So I think just being a woman, you're already used to being careful around people's feelings.
Okay. So now I'm going to take that a step further.
Hmm.
Being a woman in this industry, you have to be careful around people.
Yes.
And we about to go there, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Being a black woman in this business,
Hmm.
you have to be even more careful
Yes.
in this business because oftentimes, let's be real about it. This is a white male dominated industry.
Yes.
It's not as liberal as people would like it to be or
No.
believe it to be.
No.
So, being a woman of color
Hmm.
in this industry,
Yep.
what have been, besides having to explain something, whereas your male white counterpart wouldn't have to explain it at all? It would just be like, okay, that's how we're gonna rock and roll with it.
Hmm.
Being a woman of color in this industry, how do you navigate that? And having done it for so long, because you've been in this business for 23 years.
Yes.
So how have you been able to navigate that and still get the job done?
Ooh. Sometimes I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that, um, when Me Too came out, there were a lot of women that came forward and said, "This has happened to me. I've been sexually harassed. I've been assaulted," things like that. But what a lot of people didn't focus on were the people whose careers were affected by saying no. And I'm not trying to like minimize people that were actually assaulted or were sexually harassed, or went to the hotel room. I'm not trying to minimize their pain in any way. That shouldn't have happened to them either. But um, a lot. The one thing that really wasn't touched on a lot was being a woman of color, or being a fat woman, because this
Mm,
happens a lot. When you say no to somebody who already thinks they're above you, but they really think they're above you, like, how dare you? I'm lowering myself to want to harass you.
mhm,
And you say no. There have been jobs that or been companies that I was never hired again
mhm,
from. There have been, people that, and the funny thing about the film industry, which nobody talks about either, is that it's hard to prove that somebody
mm,
has affected your career, because they can say, we went in a different direction. It was a personality thing. For actors, we, you know, they weren't good at the audition. Um, for pretty much anybody, it's just like, they don't have to fire you. They can just not hire you again, because everybody is pretty much a freelancer. So
hmm,
you really have to like step on your tiptoes.
hmm. So
Did I answer that, or did I just
you
go on a
you
rant? I'm
no
sorry.
no you did, but so how does that, because this is about line producing, but it's about
Yes.
so much more.
Yes.
Because if there are people looking to enter into this business,
Hmm.
there are certain things you have to know. So
Yeah.
how does that affect your day to day, knowing that, okay, I have this over here to deal with, while still having to maintain a set and making sure that this department gets what they need and this department gets what they need, and I get these checks signed. So how do you balance that?
Um, I know as much as I can, because if you are knowledgeable about every aspect of your job, and as a line producer, that means you're knowledgeable about every aspect, or a majority of the aspects of every department. When I first started out, I went and volunteered at Canada or the Camera House for a couple of days, just so they can show me, this is how you, um, this is how you do check out a camera package. This is what this is. Now, mind you, that was with film. I haven't gone back and done it digitally. I worked as a lighting department coordinator. Um, I have pretty much gone to like worked or shadowed in every department, with the exception of sound, because I love sound people, but they don't want you anywhere near them.
Mm,
And, bygones, because they're listening for things. So you're not going to sit there and ask them a bunch of questions because they're making sure the sound is perfect.
mhm.
But, I learned every department, went and volunteered. Like, my mom's a costume designer, so I knew costumes already, but I still like worked a couple of days in the costume department and the makeup and hair, and um, just so that when a team member comes to me and says, "Hey, we need more money for this or this or this," I can actually say to somebody, "Well, can you do it this, and this way?" Now they can say no to me, but when they realize that I kind of know what they're talking about, um, people are much more open to like working out solutions, or fixing problems with me rather than against me.
Okay. So basically, you gave the advice just now without giving the advice, because I was going to ask you later on in the show,
Hmm.
what would be the advice that you would give someone about to enter into this business under any discipline, but you basically just answered it. Do everything that you can and learn everything that you can, because again,
Yeah.
you're speaking from a position of strength. So if
Yes.
you're telling someone, well, I think, you know what, you I listened to an interview that you did, and you talked about you were working on a film where there was a scene on the water
Hmm.
where they could have actually shot it on land. So
Yes.
can you talk? And the reason I want you to talk about that is because I want people to understand that when you know basically every job, you don't have to be an expert at it, but when you
Right.
know every single job, you
Hmm.
can make those types of suggestions and
Right.
make them with a good bet. So can you talk about that? Can you explain that?
Sure. So the scene was the father and son on the boat and having their like pivotal heart to heart moment. And they're sitting on a boat and they're throwing their beer cans in the water and then shooting them. Now, mind you, this was a lower budget film. So a scene like this is going to cost you like $500,000 for the day,
Mhm.
because, and I know this because it's going to cost you for the boat that the characters are on, then the boat that you're shooting from, and then a safety boat. Then you have to have safety divers. And in California, because of our environmental protections, you have to have somebody go in and pull all the bullets out of the water and pull all the cans out of the water because we're on the ocean. Um, so as like I did the breakdown and I said, this scene does not change in the grand scheme of the scene or the feeling of the scene or the meaning of the scene if we move this onto land and have them, firing these cans in the desert, off of a railing in the desert. And it can save you this much money. And I essentially said to the director, these are like, this is the writer and the director. This is an option for you to save some money and put it in a different place, because this movie also had some other, like, there was surfing in the movie. And when you have surfing in a movie and you're shooting it in the actual water, you're at the mercy of the ocean
Mhm.
as to what day you can shoot surfing. So we needed to save money where we could in order for this to work. And I said, this is an option that you have, and I think it's a better option. Um, I, I make suggestions that are good for the budget. I make suggestions sometimes that just have to work for the actor's availability. Um, I don't ever, like, one of the lines that I tread is, I don't ever want to force my suggestion on a director who has something in their head, or a creative that's like, this is like a pivotal scene for me. I kind of just sometimes ask them where they want to blow their load.
now, now, do you actually now? Hey, look, do you?
I have once actually asked
Okay.
somebody that. I have actually said that because I was like, just where do you want to blow it, yo?
Hmm.
um, like, and there's a lot, and I think that's one of the things that on lower budget films, it helps to have a lot of this knowledge, or like how much things are going to cost as you're reading a script, but also, I mean, line producers and the UPM are still kind of the redheaded stepchild of the project, because nobody wants to hear we can't afford it. No one wants to hear like, hey, let's change this. Everyone thinks that we're trying to like change and mess up their film, and 90% of the time, if you have an experienced line producer, I'm going to say 99% of the time, if you have an experienced line producer, they're not just making sure that we save money or whatever. We're making sure that we have enough money to finish your project. It's funny because sometimes producers don't consider line producers a producer. I am very much a producer. I've read the script, I've broken it down, and a lot of times, if you like, I've worked with directors where I sat and went through the script with them, and I was like, this is a very expensive scene. Do you want to cut this down? So that it's at the very beginning. So we're not getting to the end where we've run out of money, and now he's starting to have to cut, he or she, I'm sorry, are starting to cut stuff that was important. So prep, especially on low budget movies, lots and lots of, as much prep as you can get. A table read or a production meeting, table read through the script with the director and all the heads of department, very important. So everybody can ask their questions and everybody is on the same page. You know, I've had a DP do the same thing, say, hey, this scene is not possible unless we get 3 more cameras, a drone, and XYZ, XYZ. You know, and it's a matter of, sometimes I have to get other departments like on my side. Like, I'm like, okay, we need to talk to the director, and, you know, can you come up with a way to do this cheaper? And they're like, no. And I was like, let's go check over here if they can. No. Okay, well, now we have to like go to the director as a united front so that it's not always just me saying no.
So
but a lot of the times I say yes. It's just,
okay,
they take the no's personally. Like, every department always needs more money. And sometimes I have to like make the decision, like, you know, makeup needs more money because they're about to do like a huge blood gag and they have to redo this and this and this. Or, you know, hair needs more money because the actor that we cast has shown up and they shaved their head and we didn't know they were going to shave their head. So now we have to get them a wig. Or the lighting department needs more money. It's a balance of like, where can we save so that I can give it to, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul without going into our post money, because that's where a lot of people on low budget want to drag money from post. Oh, you know, we'll pay for it and then we'll figure out where to get more money for this. I have 4 projects that I did that are still sitting somewhere waiting for post money.
So,
and because, you know, the money that I was given was only, it was all of them were very weird projects where they were like, this is the money for the shoot and we'll figure out post later, so don't worry about it, blasey blasey. And I was like, not a good idea, but if that's the way you want to do it. And
so how far out do you begin planning? If someone says, okay, Nicci, we're going to bring you on as a line producer, how far in advance is it normal for people to actually say, okay, we're going to bring you on the project to have you work your magic?
That depends on the project. You know, I just worked on a feature called Gemini Lounge, and Gemini Lounge, we had 5-6 weeks of prep maybe. And I mean, the producer had much more prep, and luckily that producer is also a line producer, production manager. That's where his background came from. So he had much more prep and had a lot of stuff ready, but we had like 4 or 5 weeks of prep. And then I've been on jobs where, for instance, Rhett and Link, because there was so much special or effects stuff, not special effects, but effects stuff. I think we had 3 months of prep. And then if you're on a Marvel movie, you could have years of prep. I mean, I think they've been prepping Avatar for a decade, right? So it just really depends. The more effects, the more special effects, the more CGI, the more prep you need. Like 2 guys sitting in a diner talking, I can prep that in like a week, maybe 2, probably longer because of permitting, but like you can prep that in 2 weeks. Commercials, I can prep a commercial in, 10 days to 3 weeks, depending on what the commercial is. Is it a car commercial? I need more time. Is it for mac and cheese? At this point, I can prep it in 6 days, as long as I can get the permit through.
So,
yeah.
So someone in the audience wanted me to ask you a question. And the question was, ask if she's worried about how Hollywood people are going more towards very revealing films. I'm not really sure what they meant by very revealing films. I'm not sure what they meant by it. So if you could post in the comments exactly what you meant by that. I don't know if they mean more
sexual,
risque, sexual. I'm not sure. But do you kind of see Hollywood going toward that, or?
I mean, I know that there's a lot of, what do you want to call it? Like, I call them smut books. They're like I love smut books. But a lot of those, I see a lot more of those kinds of transition from like the smut book, or like a lot of people call it mommy porn, which I feel like is such a disservice to that, because it's like a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, and also the largest genre that is read in the world. So it's very much a disservice to like call them mommy porn or smut books, but that's what people know them as. And I see a little bit of a transition happening towards the film industry. Between me and you, I would really rather watch somebody having sex than watching their face blown off. I mean, I love action films, but you can't tell me that watching a couple having sex or watching a naked woman or a naked man is detrimental to children, but you're fine watching a rape scene or fine watching a murder scene. Like, that doesn't make any sense in my head. So do I see it? I think as with everything, like at one point, when Scream came out, all of a sudden there were 50,000 other like wannabe Scream movies, including like 5 other Screams and Scary Movie and this and that. Like, I think that with the success of things like 50 Shades of Grey or what is it, Sex Life and things like that on Netflix, you're going to see more of it. And if you don't like it, scroll on by. Nobody says you have to watch it.
Facts. Now, with that, are there more women writing these films, or is it still something that's primarily dominated by men writing for women, or are you seeing more women writing these types of films?
I do see more women writing these types of films, and guess what? The ones that are written by women do better, because let's face it, their main audience is going to be women. And as with the books, like, there are certain ways that, I'm going to enjoy a scene that maybe I'm not going to enjoy a scene as much that men sometimes don't get it. Like, if you ever read one of these like books that is written by a man, there's like 5 pages describing her boob. And we're like, it's a boob, move on. Rather than the action itself or the plot itself. Like, I mean, great, she's blonde, move on. Like, I don't need to know about the crystalline flow of her glossy locks. And I mean, but I do, but I don't want to hear it for 5 pages. And I feel like a lot of like kind of those borderline movies that are written by men are very much from the man's eye and what they find attractive or interesting, or gets them off, or I don't know, than from, the way women want to see it.
But you know what? That's
Uh,
interesting. No, I'm sorry, please.
no, go ahead.
But it's interesting because men are more visual.
Yes.
So if you're describing her, that's speaking more to me.
Hmm.
But it's interesting when I watch a Lifetime or Hallmark channel,
Hmm.
when I'm watching with my wife,
Yeah.
the storyline is entirely different
Yes.
because it's written more from the perspective of a female. The more
Yeah.
let's just take the lovemaking scenes, the
Hmm.
intimacy of it,
Yes.
as opposed to the visual. You're getting up close on a breast, or you're getting up close on a whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas with it's more of, how is he touching her and how is he making her feel, as opposed with
Hmm.
the dude, yo, I just want to go straight in and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference. But we're getting some great questions. I had some questions, but you know what, my
Okay.
audience is asking some questions. So Mr. Robert McTire, I hope I said your name correctly. I probably just butchered the hell out of his name. He asks, what is your favorite genre to work in, and is it more expensive to shoot genre with lots of special effects versus a period piece set in the past? Thank you guys for these amazing questions, because you're
Ooh.
making my job easier
Ooh.
as a line producer. That's a phenomenal question.
I mean, my goal is, like a lot of people, like, I want to work on Marvel and Star Wars. Like, these are the movies I want to watch. So I want to work on stuff I want to watch. Um, that's really complicated because a lot of times, like with a period piece, you are still doing a lot of effects because you're
Yes.
trying to match these past sequences. Um, for example, the Gemini Lounge that we just worked on, it was a mob movie and it's set in the early 80s. And so, yes, that's expensive because now you're looking for all those clothes, even for the backgrounds. Every single person has to be dressed. Every single person has to be like checked through hair and makeup and everything. Whereas, like, I'm on a large scene. Whereas, like, for example, on the New York scene in Avengers, people could be in their own clothes because it was present day. Um, do I think that Avengers, like, uh, I mean, Avengers, a lot of the times when you see that a movie cost $100 million or $300 million to make, not all of that goes into the making of the movie itself. A lot of it goes into like advertising, marketing, um, the actors, the producers. Like, it did not cost 300 million to go from script to can.
Mhm.
It there's a lot that goes around that. So it really depends. Like, if I'm doing a I don't know, if I'm doing kind of a superhero movie, but it's set where the superhero is from the jungle, and
Mhm.
they spend most of the time in the jungle, and there's not a lot of CGI, and it's more like just like an origin story where they're growing up or something,
Mhm.
then you could do it for a lot less than, say, having to create Wakanda.
Mhm.
Um, Period pieces can get super expensive with costuming. I mean, Downton Abbey is probably really expensive, especially when you have to, or The Queen, where or what is the show? Why am I drawing a blank?
Bridgerton.
Yes, Bridgerton. Thank you. Where you have to create these gowns, and a lot of this, there's a lot of research that goes into, like, that historical period stuff. There's a lot of prep because you're building all those costumes and worlds and everything. So it just really depends on what period, and it also depends on, like, what CGI superhero movie.
Yeah, and with period pieces, they can get expensive because it's interesting. I love period pieces.
Me
And,
too.
if you're just looking at the style of
Right.
clothing or the weaponry,
Hmm.
people say, okay, I'm looking at a medieval film, not understanding that a film set in the 1200s will look entirely different from a film set in the 1300s because the
Right.
styling is different, the
Hmm.
weaponry is different, so everything's different. So they have to get that so right, because if someone is
Yeah.
watching it that actually knows that stuff, they'll say, now, so now, why are they using this? That wasn't invented until 100 years later.
Right. And now with the internet, they will put you on blast for it. Like, prior to social media, you could get away with stuff. And yeah, Fred over at like Caltech would be like, hey, you can't do that with a computer, but Fred and his buddies are the only ones that know about it. Now Fred will get on Twitter and be like, "What are you doing?"
Hmm.
So you have to be careful, and you have to do a lot of really research. And whereas a lot with CGI, with like superhero movies or CGI or space movies, you get to make that up
Right.
because it's not real. So it's is it less work? No. Is it less research? Yes, I feel like it is.
So let's talk about, because you've worked on studio budget films and then you've worked on indie films
I I started in indie when indie before indie was indie.
before it was fashionable. Now it's fashionable. And
Yeah,
I
it was the Wild West.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of indie filmmakers are still shooting like it's the Wild West, but you do what you got to do. If you got to do some guerrilla shooting, you got to do some guerrilla shooting. But I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about, if you're on an indie set
Mhm,
and you have limited funds,
mhm.
but you want to make the best film possible. What, in your opinion, should be the things that you concentrate on the most regarding how you're actually going to budget this money out if they don't have a designated line producer? Much like when I was making films, I was the line producer and I was everything
Mhm.
else. So,
Right.
what would you say would be the most important thing when it comes to budgeting out your film?
Um, well, I mean, I'll be honest, camera, lighting, and most important is sound. I was a judge for a few years for the DGA Student Film Awards for the African American Steering Committee, and I've seen some beautiful projects that sound like crap, and they didn't win. Where if they would have sounded good, they would have won. Um, so check your, I mean, like get somebody good for sound. Um, I hate to say it because it's, but I always want to tell people make friends with people. Like if you can't afford something, um, you know, see if you can trade for something. But yes, one of the things that I like to do on lower budget is to try and pay everybody the same. So everybody's on favored nations. Nobody's making more than anybody. It doesn't really work so well nowadays, but back in the day when I was doing like a 21-day shoot for $100,000, everybody was making like $100 a day. And and back then, one of the things that we kind of did was offer people back end. Get a little chunk of back end for the crew, and if we make money, you'll make more money. It gives people a little bit of ownership in wanting this to be successful. Um, has it always worked? I mean, no. There's some movies that we did that and they didn't make any money, but there's also a couple where all of a sudden, like 5 years later, I got a check for like 5 grand. They were like, "Hey, we sold it." And everybody on the crew got like a check for a couple of grand or something, and they were like, "What is this?" And we were like, "They sold the movie finally." So I mean, also I like to say always feed people food. Very important, because you can have the shittiest day possible, but if people are happy and fed, they will let shit go. Like if you have a good lunch and a good crafty, people will let stuff go if they have snacks. Just don't let people get hangry.
I wanted you to say that so bad. Craft services.
Oof, I hate when people want to cheap out on crafty.
Let me tell you something. Look, before in a former life, I was an independent filmmaker. I
Mhm.
did stage plays, and I could not afford at certain times to pay everyone. But
Mhm.
here's what I did: I made sure that that spread was so
Mhm.
crazy. I'll tell you a little story. I did a feature film years ago called Love and Litigation, and I couldn't pay anyone. But, and I have a phenomenal family. They're very supportive. So my wife fried, chicken and, made lasagna, and her lasagna is absolutely slamming. My mother-in-law made potato salad, and which is crazy. I just, emptied my
I'm coming to
pockets
your
and,
film set.
yo, let me tell you something. We put it down.
Mhm.
And when everything was over, we had everything set up, and the food was so good. People was like, "Yo, Floyd, y'all got some aluminum foil." That's what you want people asking
Mhm.
at the end of your shoot with your craft services. Can they
Yeah,
take home a plate? If you can't pay people, please, please,
feed
please,
them.
please feed them, because you
Yep.
shared a story, um where Big Bear, when you guys were shooting out of Big
Yes.
Bear. Because I really want you guys to understand the importance of craft services. Because so could you please share that story?
Sure. We were shooting up in Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear, and um, we went on to splits. So it was we would start in the middle of the day and go to like 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And it was November. Like my whole crew, we were shooting at a summer camp. So my whole crew like was at a summer camp. They were staying in bunk beds. I mean, you got the top and the bottom bunk for yourself, but you're in bunk beds, you're at a camp. It was November, so it was October, November, so it was cold up in the mountains. Pretty much the conditions for having the worst shoot of your life, like snowing, raining, fog, cold, and like the cold that gets into your bones,
Mm.
cold. Um, and we would get off of work at like at the time that we would get off of work, they've rolled up the streets. Like there's nothing around. You can't get anything to eat. Like you can barely get anything for find a 7-Eleven. But my producer decided that, and we had a rec room because it was at the summer camp. We would all start cooking, like the PAs, any PAs that were available, production that was available, would start cooking every single night, and start making food. So when people got off, there was a whole spread for people to eat. And I've literally, this was the best shoot I ever worked on. Um, in terms of nobody complaining. Like
Mm.
we're in the worst, like some of the worst conditions, and nobody has shit to say about anything other than occasionally like, I'm frustrated with having to reset this, blah 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 blah. But like the crew had like never got to the point where they wanted to riot. And I've been on jobs where the crew is like ready to like walk just because the food is bad.
Hmm. And I'm thinking,
It's also, as a
please.
producer, like they saw her and production, because a lot of the times we are very much othered. We're always the bad guy, right?
Mhm.
But they saw her and the rest of production as like doing stuff that we didn't have to do. Like the producer did not have to leave set to go and cook for the crew. Like the production team did not have to go and help and cook for the crew. Like it's not part of our jobs.
Mhm.
But it it made morale much better.
Mm.
And you can
People,
kill morale with bad food like that.
yeah. And I think it goes beyond the food. They
Hmm.
saw that you guys actually cared,
Yeah.
because I
Now
was on.
I have had moments
Mhm.
where I'm about done with people and their crafty needs because we're on a low budget, and I like fairly recently, let's say last year, I had somebody throw a temper tantrum because there was no Nutella, and I was like, you know what? Bring your own Nutella. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like that, literally screaming at my crafty guy, like because there was no Nutella on day 2 and there was Nutella on day 1.
Go take a
I
couple
was like,
Tootsie Rolls and melt them.
so there are times when, people have been in this industry for a really long time, and especially when we're working in commercials where they've been spoiled, and then they get kind of, if they're not spoiled on every job.
Mm. And it does I remember doing my first commercial as an extra, and the craft services was bonkers, and I'm thinking that this is normal,
Mm-hmm.
and then going to something else and getting a sandwich in a white plastic container, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow. So that's how it works. But we're almost done, because I'm not going to monopolize too much of your time. But I
Oh, you're
wanted to
fun.
talk to you, and then, well, you know what? I'm going to ask you this one more question that someone
Mhm.
asked, and then I'm going to get to Women of Color Unite.
Sure.
Gentleman, Martin Recton asked, wanted to know, what is your opinion on the newest movie, Secret Headquarters, and is it better than the older movies? Now, full disclosure, I've never seen Secret Headquarters,
I
so.
haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I've been working, so I haven't really watched anything. Dude, I'm behind on so much. I'm upset. Um, Neil Gaiman's show just came out, and I was like, I just need to watch this show. I've been like waiting to watch this show. So I'm behind. So if somebody can illuminate, how,
I'm doing film festival stuff, because my film festival is in a couple of months. So
hmm
I'm watching films. So
yeah,
Martin, we're going to find out exactly what that film is, and we'll get back to you the next time Nicci is on the show. We'll be able to give you a more educated answer. But let's talk about Women of Color Unite,
hmm
which is an
okay,
amazing. But you know what? Before we get to that, there was a question I wanted to ask you, because oftentimes when people hear the word producer,
yes,
they think of one thing and one thing only. You see, the person making oogle gobs of money in
yes,
Hollywood. But can you just break down the different types of producer
yes.
there
Um,
actually are? Because there are so many different producers, and I think that's something that people would love to know, because a lot of people really don't know that it's more than one type of producer.
yeah, there's an executive producer who is I wa- I want to say executive producers are more the money guy, like the person that brings in the money or brings in certain talent, or um you know brings in aspects of the film. They Most executive producers, I'm going to say 98% of them, are not an active working producer on the set. Then we have producers who really should be the active working producer on the set, that is on set every day, that is helped through prep, has been there the whole time, um, you know, does more than just making a call or getting talent. Like their fingers are dug into everywhere. Most of my really good producers will sit down with me when I'm line producing once every 3 days, once a week, whatever, to go through numbers to see where we are. Um, you know, they help solve some of the problems. They're people I can go to when I have questions. Then, unfortunately, there's a whole aspect of nowadays of people that get the producer title that don't actually do the producer job. And the
Mhm.
producer job involves more than making gobs of money and, like, having lunch with Angelina, or, you know, going to George Clooney's weekend retreat in Italy, or, something like that. Like, um, it's a real job. And generally it's a hard job, and it's a job that does not stop day, night, weekend, holiday. Um, I recently worked with a producer where we literally wrapped on Sunday. His wife gave birth on Tuesday, and he was back to work on Monday.
Mm.
So, and the other problem is the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is So a producer, let's say a producer makes $100,000 for this job, which sounds like a lot of money, right? 6-week shoot, that's a lot of money, right? He's probably done about 5 months of prep and is going to do another 2 months of prep. So you could be on a project for 6, 7, 8, 9 months for that $100,000. And now it doesn't sound like as much money. I mean, not saying that $100,000 sucks, but like, it's just not as much money. Yeah, I mean, and then there's the producers that own production companies, which, you know, there's a lot of investment to having a proper production company. Like, I see people opening production companies left and right, but then when I ask them, do you have infrastructure? Do you have credit cards? Do you have insurance? Do you have like accounts open it with all these vendors? Do you know? And they look at me like I'm a crazy person because they don't. All they have is an LLC. Like, do you have a full bank account? You know, things like this. So, I mean, I'm in the process of opening my own production company with my partner, and it's called Rebels in Exile.
Nice.
And we're trying to work on projects. We're trying to kind of democratize and equalize things. So, my goal is to do movies where there's a lot of diversity, but they're not cast as like the diverse person. Like, you know, the secretary could be somebody that's in a wheelchair, but we're not going to like bang on the fact that that person's in a wheelchair the whole time. Or, you know, can the I don't know, the cop can be a gay person, and you know, LGBTQ person. We're not going to bang on the fact that that person is LGBTQ the whole time. Or a trans person. We're not, you know, we're casting these people, like casting diversity as a regular person, because diverse people are just regular people. So I think that's more of the way. That's a better way to equality than making a lot of projects about these groups. Is to, I mean, yes, definitely need more projects about the various groups, but also to put them in, like, to not cast characters because of who they are or what they are.
Right.
You know, if it says cop, that anybody can be a cop. LGBTQ, woman, man, Latinx, African American, Indian, you know, whatever, Native American, Indian, anybody can be a cop, right? So we don't have to like stick to the narrow version of it. And so we want to kind of make our diversity flow naturally, like the way it happens in the world. I have, you know, LGBTQ friends. Every time I see them, I don't talk about them being LGBTQ. Like, I have you know, differently abled friends. That's not our main conversation. You know, my friend that's in a wheelchair, we talk about sex. Like, I don't talk about, you know, how are your tires doing? Like, I just don't.
But yeah, but
like,
it's so true. It's so true. It's you're and it's not even that, you know, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here. It's not even that you're casting diversity. You're just casting real life. It's real life. You know, people are like, oh my gosh, you got to. But yo, if you walk outside your door, everyone doesn't look the same. It's not a monolithic looking type of society. You have so many. I could go to the store right now and see everything in that store.
Yeah.
That's just life. And you would think that they would move more towards that, so that when you see someone in a wheelchair, or you see someone that happens to be LGBTQ, but okay, it's not a big deal. It's like the one thing that really gets my goat, and I understand it. Okay, we'll just take the gentleman that became a 4-star general in the Marine Corps a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember this gentleman's name, African-American gentleman. And they said he is the first African-American to become a 4-star general in the Marine Corps. And every time I hear that, I'm happy, but I'm also pissed, because I'm saying to myself, it's 2022, and we're still saying she's the first woman to ever, he's the first dude to ever, they're the first. Why are we still dealing with, there will always be firsts in certain circumstances, but for mainstream life, why is it that she's the first woman to head a corporation? Why is
Mhm.
that? That makes absolutely no damn sense to me. So you're basically just talking about
Mhm.
casting life. And with that,
Yeah.
that leads me into the question that I wanted to get to, and then we're definitely going to get out of here. Women of color unite.
Women of Color Unite. It is an organization started by Cheryl Bedford, and to answer the question that Hollywood kept pushing forth, that when we said there's no diversity behind the camera, there's this and this, and they were like, well, we don't know any women of color, and she was like, really? So started, I think, what are we on, 4 years now? I think we're on 3 or 4 years, but
Yeah.
it started at one of her friends let her borrow his house, and we had like a group, and there was over, and she wanted to talk about putting together a list, and we put together, well, she put together the JTC list, and started off with 150 women on that list, and we are over 5,000 now.
5,000.
5,000. You know, started a bunch of programs that to help. One of the big things with Women of Color Unite is because women of color make significantly less than anybody else in the industry. And oh, by the way, I can tell you that we also work harder, and we will also work when other people won't. COVID, my phone would not stop ringing during COVID, and um, uh, anyway, so yeah, we just did our third round of Start with Aid Hollywood, and 2,000 women got two
Wow.
mentors to help them with their career in 3 countries.
That's
So we're in
beautiful.
US, Canada, and England, in the UK, and expanding. And Cheryl and Manon and their whole team are constantly working and constantly like going at it. We have the Auntie Brunch every year, and then we have our big event that comes up next year. Everybody donate. Go to Woke You and donate, because in addition to us getting paid less, women of color led organizations or women of color organizations also only make 5% um, of charitable donations. So and funding. So don't donate. But yeah, we have events. Everything's free, so it's always free. We don't charge women of color. We don't gatekeep. Come and join. They're just starting Men of Color Unite. So that, I think they'll be opening that relatively soon. Um,
Yeah, we're going to
Gino,
be open to, yeah, we're going to be opening that relatively soon. I'm
yeah.
actually a founding
Oh,
member of Men of Color
there you
Unite,
go.
director of membership, ladies and gentlemen. So
Nice.
yeah,
And
so I'm so
you guys
excited.
are doing something with you guys are like starting to push to the HBCUs, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Our mission,
Nice.
much like
Hmm.
with you guys and Cheryl,
Right.
is we don't want anyone to have the excuse, well, I don't know. Well, you know what? We're
Hmm.
going to put it somewhere. If you don't know, you can
Yep.
find it, or I can reference you to it. Because see,
Yep.
that's an excuse.
Hmm.
That's an excuse. I
Um,
don't know.
no, I mean, as much as Hollywood like pushes and like beats the drum for everything, and like beats up companies and corporations and all of these actors and producers and features, we're just, I mean, Hollywood's just as bad of an offender, if not worse.
Mhm.
Like, you want to beat up like Wall Street, start looking in your own backyard. I have had people tell me that they don't know anybody, and I was like, have you ever looked for anybody?
Mhm.
um I recently, in the last few years, fairly recently, I was interviewed for a job, and this is really funny. I was interviewed for a job, for a VP job at a company, and as I left, strange, like the assistant to the people that I interviewed with happened to be in as they were discussing me, and the one guy says, yeah, she's great. She knows it all, blah, 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 etc. I would love her, but don't you feel like she should be a little bit further along in her career at her age?
Mm-hmm.
And do we think she's too old for this job? And I was like, first of all, I don't think you can be too old to do a job where you need to know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it things are great, are really good diversity wise for people just coming into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much for people that have already been here for years, where we lived through the time of they didn't hire people that looked like me in the
Mm-hmm.
C-suite as I was coming up. They just didn't. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that it is what it is. Like, I can't say that. I can't sugarcoat it. Like, they
Right.
didn't hire women of color. They hired more men of color, but they really didn't hire women of color in
Mm-hmm.
the C-suites in the 90s, 2000s. Like, it's only been, there's a lot of firsts happening in Hollywood right now.
Mm-hmm.
First woman VP, first this, first that. So yeah, it's frustrating that there's still a lot of firsts happening, and
But
it's frustrating that some of us have aged out. Like, I don't know how you can age out of knowledge. It's very strange. Very strange.
you never age out of knowledge, and the interesting thing about that is, let you go somewhere and do a film independently and it blows up.
Mm.
Those very people saying, "Oh, she's a little too old." Now your phone won't stop ringing. "Oh, we'd love to have you
Oh
come
yeah.
in." But see, now you're going to really have to pay me.
Oh yeah. I charge people more to fix things
Mm-hmm.
because it's easier for me to start it, work it, finish it, have it set up right from the beginning. If I have to come and fix things, it's like 10 times the amount of work. You
Absolutely.
need to pay me more money.
Absolutely.
There's always that story of it's a guy who, like, something breaks on a ship and nobody can fix it. They brought in 3 people, and finally this guy comes in and like fixes a screw, and leaves the guy with the $10,000 bill. And they were like, and the guy's like, "What is this $10,000?" And he's like, "I need an itemized bill." And he's like, "Fix screw, $8. Know which screw to fix." $992.
That's right. Because I have to undo the damage that you did,
Yes.
and then fix it. So it's like I'm
Yes.
doing double the work.
Oh,
So
yeah.
since I'm doing double the work, I have to be
Plus, I
compensated for
also
that.
have to find the damage that you've done.
Right.
Like, I've been on a job where, somebody messed up the SAG contracts, but not all of them.
Mm.
So I'm like digging through and fixing problems before they cost you more money. Having bad production or skimping on production will cost you more money. Because when you're dealing with payroll and contracts, especially with SAG and the DGA and the IA, mistakes can cost you lots and lots in penalties and get your show shut down.
Mm. So last question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, come on, we can do more than one. No, just kidding.
I want to. You have to go and finish your day, but you're definitely coming back. This is definitely not going to be your last time here, because there are so many questions that I did not get to.
Okay.
What advice would you give someone just coming into this industry?
Learn. I can tell you that with every single project, I still learn something new every project. So trust me when I say that learn as much as you can, listen to people. And I don't care if that person is older than you or younger than you. I've learned things from, I've had a kid that's 22 years old that's like, "Hey, I have this really cool idea. You know what? That is a good idea. Let's do that instead of my idea."
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and you can get ideas and information and and stuff from every person, from a PA to the crafty guy to the teamster to the director to the producer, like throughout, like listen, learn, ears open, sometimes mouth closed. And then also just know as much as you can about the department that you want to be in, but also don't stick yourself in a department that you might not want to be in. I have known a shit ton of people that when, decided they wanted to be, were in the camera department, that were like, I kind of want to do wardrobe, or like writers who decided they wanted to be DPs, or, DPs that decided they wanted to be writers, like you might just experiment. Experiment in different things, keep your eyes open, listen to other departments. If you want to be in production, you really need to sit around and listen to other departments. Most of the time it's bitching, but you still learn something. Like, if I've learned how to avoid people bitching by listening to people bitching on another job. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that ever again because everybody was angry. And your failures teach you things. So do things, go out, fail. If you only have success, then it's just going to be boring. Go out and fail.
Yeah, you ain't learning shit. You ain't learning shit. You're really not.
Yeah. Also, I will tell you that the more money you have, the less problems. Now, not always, but it's nice to have a lot of money so you can solve problems. Like if if I need another camera and I can just rent it and not have to like, it's very helpful. But you still will run into, you'll still run into problems. I mean, there's more money, more problems, right? But at the same time, not in the film industry. Up to like 15 million. 15 million is a good range. You can, like, you're doing something, you've got the money to do things. Once you get to 100 million, you have totally different problems. But really learn everything. If you're in a union, like if your department, like you've decided to be a gripper electric or camera, read your basic agreements. Oh, and if you're in production, read all of the basic agreements. But read your basic agreement, know your rules, because guess what? I know all the rules and I can bend them without breaking them. So it's good to know the rules. But you also want to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of you. So know your rules. No, I mean, I know people that have never read their basic agreement and don't know they're supposed to get paid for something. Oh, I didn't know that I could get extra money for this. Know your rules. Just read them. Read them once. Just so you know, if you have a question, where in the book to look.
So what's next? What's next?
Ooh, well, I decided to take most of the summer off.
Oh, nice.
I went to a couple of film festivals, the Michaud Film Festival.
That's where we met.
Yes.
Y'all better get out there and get that network on.
Yeah, I got to see some great projects there. I don't know. I think I'll do a couple of commercials. There's a couple of features that I'm reading. It's another thing, like if you can get your budget done by a line producer instead of when you're prepping a film to get money for the film, save your pennies and have a line producer actually do your schedule and your budget. It looks much more professional when you're trying to like get people to pay for things. But I have a couple of projects in the works, and then we're working on building our company. We have a couple of projects there. I'm trying to like take a little bit of a break. Like I had it 2 years, from June of 2020. I did not stop working. Did a movie in Savannah for a while, and I mean we got shut down because of COVID again. But then Your Attention Please, 6 commercials, and a feature in North Carolina, which was, by the way, really interesting to shoot in the mountains of North Carolina during the election.
Mm. That's an
Good time.
entirely other podcast.
That is a whole other podcast, by the way.
Whoa.
But and again, it was another one of those projects, though. It was a lower budget project, but everybody was kind of friends and it was a good time. So I think between 2020 and 2021, I did 4 features, 8 or 9 commercials, and into 2022, yeah, 4 features, 8 or 9 commercials, and a TV show. So I said take the summer off.
Wow.
So we'll see. Right about like next week or so, we'll start looking at projects and what I'm going to do for the fall. And then come December, if I'm not packed, I will go to Austria and visit my mom.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. I have had such a phenomenal time. Again, you are definitely coming back because there are so many things that we haven't talked about. Because I saw that you're a Gemini. So we're going to, we talk about, when's your birthday?
June 21st.
What? June 19th. What's up?
Nice. What's up?
I was like, yeah, I know why it was the reason I liked her. Yep. Gemini's in the house. All this creativity, ladies and gentlemen, it's just like creativity overload. But thank you so much for coming on the show. And I truly hope that everyone that tuned in, thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, please share it. Please subscribe, because we like that people subscribe. And it's not because somebody's trying to build these crazy numbers. It would be nice, but people need to be educated on how this business really works. I'm really adamant about having people on the show that are telling people how this business really works. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. And listen, if you like the show, you could buy me a cup of coffee. My manager's like, you got to have people stop by you a cup of coffee. I'm like, yeah, I drink a lot of coffee. So it's coffee.com, Floyd Marshall Jr. So you can head on over and buy a brother a cup of coffee. And if I don't drink a cup of coffee, then I'll donate a cup of coffee. So that's coffee, kofi.com/Floyd Marshall Jr. Buy somebody a cup of coffee. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and spending an hour and a half of your day with Nicci Freeman and myself. And I hope to see you guys again, because again, we're going to have her back. And I think we're going to bring you back with another guest. Okay. I don't know who yet. You know what? I may just hit Cheryl Bedford up and have the both of you on. Oh boy, that would be a show that you guys definitely want to tune into.
Yep.
Nicci, oh boy.
Cheryl will tell it straight. But she's also a line producer. And Cheryl works in a different facet as a line producer, worked in a different facet of the industry that I did. I mean, she did do features as well, but she did a lot of documentary and then some reality, and then head of production work for Awesomeness TV. So she has insights in a different way than I do.
Yeah. We're going to have to make that happen. I'm going to have to hit her up, and then we're going to have to get our schedules together, because you know what, you said you're taking the summer off. So, you know, you have time to do it, but that is awesome. And it was such a pleasure meeting you in Los Angeles. It was just great. And I'm going to tell you something before we go, ladies and gentlemen. Sure. I cannot stress the importance of relationships. I cannot stress that enough, because that's another way this industry works. And Nicci talked about it earlier, where if you can't pay for something, if you've built meaningful and real relationships with people, you can call on people and say, hey, I need your help with this. Are you down? And if you've built if you built non-transactional relationships, because people can sniff that. If you've built non-transactional relationships with people, people will bend over backwards in this industry to help you. So I just wanted to leave you with that. Any closing remarks?
Be nice. Well, be nice. Be nice. Actually, let me rephrase that. Be kind. There's a difference between nice and kind. Like, I always found like New Yorkers are kind. People from LA are nice. But you know the difference, right? So be nice to people, because I I've I've watched projects, or I've watched people quit because they just hate their supervisor, not superior, their supervisor. And I've watched people go like crawl through the mud because they love you. So be nice to people.
Be nice. Be
Be
kind.
nice. Be kind. Be kind. Yeah, I've you know, in if your car breaks, if you get a flat tire in New York, um, somebody will cuss you out while changing your tire,
Mhm.
but they'll change your tire. They'll be like, what did you do? What is wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. But they'll change your tire. In LA, they will walk up and be like, oh my God, that sucks. Goodbye. And wander off and leave you in the rain with the flat tire. So be kind.
And on that
You
note,
might get, you know, you can cuss somebody out
right.
while you're helping them.
And that's a great note to end it on, ladies and gentlemen. Cuss them out, but be kind while you're doing it. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you again on A Conversation With. Take care, everyone. And as I always say, love this like a hobby, but please treat it like a business. Peace out.